With a large variety of optics available on the market today, which pistol optic would be right for you? These optics were provided to me by opticsforce.com. If you guys would like to save money buying optics, I have a coupon code you're able to use. Again, no kickback from you using it. It's just a great way for you to be able to save some money. So this video is actually subscriber recommended. I greatly appreciate when you guys comment. If you guys have a video you'd like to see, make sure to make a comment in the comment section below. And if you see someone else who has a very good suggestion, like their comment so I get a better understanding of maybe something you guys would like to see. I have quite a variety of optics in front of me today. I'm going to try to keep it as simplistic as possible. And I'm going to end off with the one that I use the most. And again, this is just going to be about my preference. Just because something works for me doesn't mean it will work for you. So I'm going to try to give you as much information as possible so you guys can give yourself a better, more informed decision of which one you might want to go with. So there's a few different styles of optics I'm going to speak about, and I'm trying to give you kind of the pros and cons of each. What I would want to start off with would probably be kind of like the creator of the most durable and most reliable, which would be the RMR CC. So this is for specifically the concealed carry option. They do have the standard RMR, which is also extremely popular, has the longest track record when it comes to durability and reliability. Any other optic we speak about may or may not have a good track record for the future, but in regards to longevity, the one that has the longest and most reliable is going to be the RMR option. So Trijicon is obviously, again, known for durability. Their design of kind of a recessed window helps with impacts when it hits the floor. There's a lot of really great things to say about this optic. Now, this particular optic is using a 3.25 MOA dot, which is a quite popular dot size when it comes to using it for concealed carry use or just pistol use in general. It uses a right and left side button adjustment, so you can quickly adjust your brightness with a large oversized buttons. And really the biggest downside to this optic that a lot of people have is the fact that they have a bottom mounted battery. So the battery is located on the bottom of the optic, which means every time you want to change your battery, you have to remove the optic from the pistol, you have to change the battery, and then you have to reconfirm your zero, because since the optic has been removed, you really want to make sure that it's still hitting exactly where it needs to be. So generally speaking, although the batteries on these optics usually last around the 5-year mark, it is recommended to change them at least once a year because it doesn't cost that much. It's better to know that you always have a fresh battery. So on your birthday or whatever it might be, choose a day that you change the batteries in your house. That also includes your your smoke detectors, things like that. It's probably a good habit to be a part of. So having that removed is kind of like a downside. The other thing is just out of a preference thing is that this is an open emitter optic, which means there's only one piece of glass that's located on the front of the optic, and the rear portion of the optic is open, which means any dust, debris, things like that will get into the optic area and could either block the projection of the reticle, or it might be something that like you have to scoop out with your finger if it becomes a problem. With the RMR CC, which is smaller, it is a smaller window, so it could be a little bit cumbersome to deal with, but it doesn't mean that this is less reliable. Now, a lot of people might say, well, I'm never in the dirt, I'm never in the mud, I'm never in the sand. Then either this could be a good option for you, or you might still realize that smudges are a very common reality. So oftentimes when you're using a red dot, you might actually start racking off your red dot, which is perfectly fine if it's mounted correctly. It shouldn't be a problem at all to do so, but doing that could create smudges and wear on the front of the optic, which means that you will need to wipe it at some point. Now, if they close emitter optic, which we'll speak about later, that might be less of a concern, but that is just something to take into consideration when you're choosing an optic choice. So there's nothing wrong with this optic. It's a very durable optic. It has a good track record. This might be worth considering if you're going to use whether for the full size or for the smaller size option. The RMR CC is definitely a great option. Another option I just kind of want to get out of the way, this is a brand new optic from Vortex. This is the Vortex Defender CCW. It's again still relatively new on the market. I'm going to be honest with you that this is not necessarily the first optic I would recommend for a few different reasons. First of all, this is an open emitter optic. That's just preference. Again, it depends on what your purpose of use is and what you'd like to be able to get out of it. The next thing I'd want to point out is that this optic uses a 6 MOA dot. It's also a nice thing because one of the other optics I'm going to be speaking about is a 6 MOA dot as well. And for concealed carry use, having a larger dot is definitely not a problem because it gives you kind of a larger side picture, a more just larger area of just like impact here, and you should be good to go. The biggest downside to this is that this battery life is around 9,500 hours, which doesn't sound like, it might sound like a lot, but comparatively, the other optics we're dealing with on the table are averaging around 50,000 hours. So it's a massive gap in between these two. So it just makes me a little bit worried because it also depends on the brightness setting you're going to be choosing. So if you need to be using full brightness, I don't know what the battery life is going to be like. It will definitely be lower, but it just makes me worried about not being able to last as long as you need it and not knowing how long it's able to actually go with. Now, the Vortex options usually come with a lot of accessories. This one comes with a mount that you could mount it to a shotgun or a rifle, technically. But again, it wouldn't necessarily be my first option when it comes to options available on the market. Now, unlike, again, the pros to this, unlike the Trijicon RMR, it is a top-fed battery, which means the battery is removable from the top top of the optic, so you never need to remove it from your firearm to need to re-zero it. You can just change the battery from the top of the optic and you'll be good to go. This does also have the adjustments for the brightness on the right and left side. They are smaller than the RMR, but they are there on the right and left side. This also, like some of the other options we're going to be showing you, has a recessed notch in the rear portion of the optic, which means when you're setting up your iron sights, your backup sights for this optic, it'll kind of give you an easier guide of being able to make sure it's lined up properly, which is a nice feature. Since this optic is brand new and the specs don't show anything really particularly incredible, even though it does come with a lot of features, I probably would stick to other offerings that we're going to show you today. But I did want to point out that this is newer on the market and it's just something you might be able to consider when it comes to choosing a red dot for your gun. Going into kind of the next category, this is going to be kind of the more popular optics that are available on the market today. These options are going to be from Holosun. Now, this particular optic, I made a video on way back. This is the Holosun 508T. This is an awesome optic. I've been using it for years. It runs really nicely. They work great. Again, downside, just to clarify, it is an open emitter optic. I do often have issues with smudging. That's why I'm able to give that kind of feedback in regards to the other offerings, because I do have that issue. So even right now, I'll try to do a close up without me touching it now. You should see in the glass there is some kind of smudge. And if you don't see it, I promise you I do see it, where when you're looking through it, even when you wipe it down. So if I'm often using my shirt to try to clean it, you also have to try to get your shirt on the inside of it to try to get it as smooth as possible. But it definitely smudges. Again, it's not the biggest deal in the world. You could still see the reticle, but when it comes to sand, dust, debris, things like that, it will get and smudge the optic. But in regards to functionality, this optic has worked great for me. It has a great 32 MOA circle and has a center dot, so being able to find a target, have it anywhere in the circle and fire is great. That's the other benefit to the Holosun optics we're going to be speaking about, is that the RMR and the Vortex optics, they only have a single dot reticle and they work fine. Again, if it's preference, it works fine. I like being able to have a multi-reticle system. So Holosun has their what's referred to as the MRS system, which is multi-reticle system, and Holosun optics are known to come with that. So you could usually choose between 3 reticles, which is either the dot, circle on the dot, or the circle only. So it just gives you variety based on what you're going to use it for purpose of use. So for the open emitter category, when it comes to full size guns, I would definitely go with the 508T. I think it's a great option, definitely available. It's affordable. It has a solar panel on top. The battery life is great on these. I think around 50,000 hours. This one is made out of titanium, so it's also, again, very durable. Batteries mounted on the right side of the optic, so you don't need to remove it from the gun and need to re-zero. Easily removable and changeable, and they definitely work great. One downside I will say to Holosun optics in general, which really does annoy me, is the fact that their tool size to be able to adjust the reticles are so small that you have to use theirs. You can't, like a lot of the other offerings, just use a shell casing you found at the range. You have to use the tool specifically to be able to make sure to do it properly. So that's just going to be kind of a consideration to have, because I have gone to the range before and couldn't find a tool and it was really stressful to deal with. So just have that in mind, that you need to have a tool around if you plan on adjusting or using this optic at all. In the micro category to that, this is the 407K. They also have the 507K. The only real difference between the two is the 507K has the option for the multi-reticle system, while the 407K only has a dot. This dot, like I mentioned before, this is a 6 MOA dot. I was using it for quite a long time. It worked really nicely. I had no issues with it. This also got really smudged up. The inside of the reticle is very covered with smudges and dust because, again, it is an open emitter optic. I'm going to keep mentioning that because it is important to notice that it may not be the biggest deal in the world, but it is definitely a variable that you should consider when it comes to optics that you're going to choose. On this optic, both the buttons are on the left side of the optic, so that's where the adjustments are because it is a much smaller framed optic. And on the right side is going to be where the battery is able to be removed. Again, you don't need to remove it from the firearm at any point. You can just switch out the battery directly from the side. Again, 6 MOA dot, it works really nicely for subcompact guns like your Glock 48s, your Glock 43X, Springfield, Hellcat, things like that. This might be a great option to be able to look at, and it works fine for me. Just a preference in regards to open versus closed emitter optics, as well as also remembering that you need to use a specialty tool to make sure you're able to adjust it correctly. Now we're going to go to the closed emitter section. This is going to be kind of where my favorite optics are. I'm going to show you the one that I was really hopeful about for a very long time. And then lastly, the one that I'm personally using day to day, the one that I trust to use on my concealed carry gun, and is the one I'd probably recommend you to most, whether it's going to be for your full size or for your subcompact options. The one that I really got initially that I thought was going to be amazing, this is going to be the 509T. Now this is again a titanium option. It is a closed emitter optic, which means anytime there was smudging or a problem, I could just wipe the front off and wipe the back off and you're good to go. There wasn't a problem at all with dealing with that. It has the buttons on the left side of the optic. They're quite large to be able to deal with, and also the battery again mounted on the right side, so there was no issue in regards to removing the optic to be able to deal with changing the battery. Now, the biggest issue that came about with this optic, again, this optic had all the greatest features that I thought were amazing. For some reason, I don't understand why, they went with a very odd mounting system. It's kind of like a clamp as opposed to anything else that's currently available in the market. So I believe that the Aimpoint Acro, things like that, also use some kind of clamping option, but this was not compatible with anything I was able to find, which means there wasn't a lot of companies making aftermarket plates, because if it wasn't guaranteed to be profitable for them, then why would they make it? So I had to figure out all these weird ways to be able to mount it. And if you could tell right now, the gun that it's mounting on, you might hear that, it is completely loose because this is not fit to this particular gun correctly. So it's been definitely a problem to be able to deal with that. If you have an aftermarket slide, I made a video on being able to make them compatible, but it was just kind of like a really rigged up way to try to do it, and it wasn't really the best. So although I really thought this would be kind of a game changer in regards to what's available in the market, I like the fact that it was closed emitter, I like the reticle size, I like the design. The mounting system was a real pain to deal with, which means I ultimately still have it, but it's not something I really use. What I do use this optic on is going to be for like mounting it as an offset mount for like an LPVO, or being able to use it as a dedicated mount. Like Reptilia Core makes mounts that you're able to use it for like rifle style setups. Really cool, really nice. Those work great. But in regards to pistol selection, it's not really something I'd recommend going with. The last two optics I want to speak about, which I think are really going to be the game changers in regards to what's available on the market, and it's kind of what I thought Holosun should have been doing from the beginning, and I don't know why they didn't. This is going to be the EPS and the EPS carry. The EPS and the EPS carry are a closed emitter optic, which uses more standard style mounting options, and there's also a lot of plates that come with the kit they're able to use. So even if it's not exactly what you want, there are plates that are able to be adaptable to be able to make it work nicely. In this case, I'm using a plate from C&H Precision, and they work really, really great. This again is closed emitter optics, so swiping and wiping works really nicely. It does still require a dedicated tool, which is going to be just something that Holosun does. Then battery mounted on the side again, so no issue with needing to remove. And then the adjustments for the reticle are on the left side. This, since it uses again a standard, more standard style mounting option, it makes it much easier to figure out which gun it's able to work with. The EPS is the full size, so again, it would be working on your Glock 17s, your Glock 19s, guns of like standard size width of your slides. And again, you're able to use the EPS or the EPS carry. They're kind of just like the ones that Holosun should be sticking with. Again, I don't know why it took them this long to figure out using standard mounting options like this would be most ideal, but it's definitely what I'm using right now for reticle options. They do come in green, they do come in red, they do come with whether you want a single dot or if you want the multi-reticle system. I do really like the multi-reticle system, so you have options in regards to trying out the single dot or the circle and the dot, just based on your preference. I'm usually using the circle and dot combination, which really works well for me. And then you can see on the top as well, it does have a plate, it has a portion for being able to use solar to be able to work on the gun as well. So this is currently my primary carry when it comes to optics. If I were to buy a new optic for my full-size guns or any of my other guns, I would stick with the EPS line just because it seems the most reasonable. If you're looking for strict durability, longest track record in regards to quality and all that, the Trijicon RMR CC or the RMR will definitely be the way to go. But Holosun has really made a statement in regards to the quality of their optics and the ones that they're using, and I think they're absolutely amazing. So again, my personal preference would be, if you're going to go for your subcompact or full-size guns, the EPS carry or the EPS works great, or strict durability, the RMR CC, especially if you only like a single dot. They do come in different dot sizes as well, so whether it be 3.25 or a 6 MOA, which I do believe they have those offerings as well. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.